Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined by my co-host Tom Woods, and today, in anticipation for Kung Fu Panda 3, well, I think it actually came out yesterday for us in the UK, we'll be giving a discussion on Kung Fu Panda 1 and Kung Fu Panda 2. These are going to be a spoiler review. Usually in our main reviews we'll do a spoiler-free and a spoiler section, but as these have been out for quite a while and the third one's out, it will probably just be more beneficial to just give a overall discussion of them. So there will be spoilers involved in these if you haven't seen them. In short, if you haven't seen them, personally I would recommend seeing them, but Tom, I know you just mentioned that perhaps we will have vastly different opinions on these movies.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend them. However, I'm not particularly keen on the series as a whole.
Okay, well, we could go into more in depth in that now. So obviously we'll kick off with the first one. So Kung Fu Panda was released 2008. That makes me feel very, very old because I remember distinctly going to see this. This was DreamWorks' biggest opening for a non-sequel film, and it was the highest grossing animated film of the year worldwide. It was nominated for Best Animated Feature, which is unsurprising because most animated features do just get automatically nominated into that list, but it lost to WALL-E that year. So let's go for the plot then, if someone hasn't seen it before. So, in the Valley of Peace, Po the panda finds himself chosen as the Dragon Warrior despite the fact that he is obese and a complete novice at martial arts. At its core, the plot is very simple. It's an underdog story. It's your classic, I know, well, usually me and you hate this mechanic, but in animated films I kind of let it slide. The whole prophecy mechanic. There's a prophecy where, you know, the lesser known guy, the underdog, is going to rise up and be the greatest kung fu legend of all time. And then so it just kind of plays out from there, where a villain rises up and then he has to prove himself, go against the odds, and eventually become the Dragon Warrior at the end of the movie. We've talked at length about this mechanic in movies. The Hobbit, Star Wars both use prophecy mechanics, and it's a very easy plot point, I think. Even Lego Movie did it to some extent, but I don't know. With animated movies, I think I'm just a lot more lenient with it. But our thoughts before going in, because was this the first time you'd watched these movies in preparation for these reviews, or did you watch them in the past?
No, I had seen them. I did go to the cinema to see both of them. And my thoughts going in at the time, if I remember correctly, were, I was looking forward to seeing what looked like a funny movie, and at the time my opinion on Jack Black was sort of, he wasn't at the top of my like list at the time.
No.
I mean, I don't know why he's not a nuisance or anything, but I think going in, I expected a good time, and for it to crack loads of really good and funny jokes, and to actually one of the main things I was going into this for was to hear Jackie Chan do some voice acting.
Yes. Yeah, plays the character of Monkey in it, and I'll get to that in a bit once we start breaking down the characters, but I actually think that one of the failings of this series in general is not focusing on the Furious Five as much as they probably could. They're all interesting characters, but we never really get to see a whole lot of them. My thoughts before going in, I remember distinctly there was nothing on at the cinema. I saw trailers for this and I thought it looked absolutely just terrible. It looked like terrible humour. It came out in the onslaught of some really bad animated movies that I'd seen in the past, and I saw the title Kung Fu Panda and I thought, what the hell is this monstrosity? Just no, I'm so done with DreamWorks at the minute. I'm not going to see this. But I think that I was with a friend and his younger brother wanted to see it. We were heading to the cinema. There was nothing else on. So unfortunately, we had to go and see it. And in all honesty, from the opening frame of the film, I was just pulled straight into it. What I love about the film is just the animation looks fantastic, and they just get better and better as the films go on. I have actually seen Kung Fu Panda 3 at this point, but I'm not going to give anything away. We should have a review out for that in the next few days. But what is consistent with all these movies is the animation. And what's nice is we live in a world now where CGI computer animation is pretty much just the dominant force in animated films. And although this is done in that animation, it has moments where it does use hand-drawn 2D animation, like in the very beginning of the film. And I love that it has that blend. This is definitely, in my opinion, the strongest animated film series currently that we have now. Toy Story would probably be at number one, and whilst these films don't even come close to what Toy Story is able to capture, I just think they're really, really fun, and I think they do some really creative things with the animation. The fight scenes, for example, are incredibly well choreographed for an animated movie. And that's all I can say about them. They're just really simple stories. I like the characters and they're fun.
Yeah, the animation itself is very good. One thing I will say though is that I don't think, and I didn't think this at the time, was that the first movie was DreamWorks' best film. I didn't think that way. My opinion of it was that, in fact, I came out kind of disliking it. And I mean, it was fun. It just, to me, it didn't have much going for it apart from the animation. And I didn't care about anyone. The villain I thought was a bit lackluster. You didn't focus on the Furious Five as much as you should. And it's things like that just bog it down. And really, to me, it didn't stand out as a great work. It was fun and enjoyable for what it was, but it just didn't do anything for me apart from being just a forgettable, say, trip to the theatre, to the cinema to see it. And I mean, that's not a fault of the film. I'm not too keen on it, but I understand people's love for it. I understand why people like it. But my opinion was very. I think I've grown to appreciate it more over the years than I originally did.
Yeah.
I think my thoughts have altered significantly, because originally I absolutely hated it. I came
wow.
Just going, this was absolute trash. But it's not. It does throw some good jokes, and it is quite funny and quite spectacular. I mean, the animation is really good. Really, really good. And that is simply the best thing about this film. But I don't think it's DreamWorks' best movie. I think that goes to Shrek.
Yeah, no, I was just going to, yeah.
And one thing I will say, I think, as far as plots go, I think DreamWorks work best when they're doing sort of self-parody, different genres. So like Shrek, you basically parody the fairy tales.
Yeah.
Everything about fairy tales. And that was really, really good. I really love Shrek.
Yeah, well, I probably agree with that as well. When you mentioned that Kung Fu Panda is not DreamWorks' best film, I would agree that probably Shrek, and definitely leaps and bounds above the original Shrek 2, is probably the best DreamWorks movie. But before that, you had Shrek the Third come out in 2007, so that was a year before Kung Fu Panda came out. And unfortunately, that movie, for me, and I think for many other people, sort of killed the Shrek franchise dead. And then after that, they did Shrek Forever After, I think it was called. And whilst it wasn't as bad as the third one, it was still nowhere near as good as the first and second one. I agree with that. I think that Shrek, and definitely Shrek 2, are a lot more smarter with their humour. I think that it can appeal to kids and adults. And whilst I think Kung Fu Panda definitely can, I think it's more geared towards a child audience, whereas there are some jokes in Shrek 2 that are immediately intended for an adult audience, or film references from more adult films. Jokes I still pick up now when I watch it, you know.
I think that's kind of one of the problems I had with the plot, is because it did have some self-parody to it. But I just don't think it really committed to it, and the plot was very simple. the plot to Shrek was very simple as well, but you had layers of, it's like onion, it has layers.
I knew you were going in that direction.
It's like it has all these comic layers to it, and I that's one thing I don't think Kung Fu Panda has. It is quite funny on a surface level, but I don't think you can really pick it up the same way as you can other DreamWorks movies.
Oh, no, I will fight you on that one, because one of the things I was going to mention is one of the strengths of this whole series, and we'll get into this more with Kung Fu Panda 2, is just the development of it all, and I do think that the movie has so much heart to it. There are moments where, I mean, it could just be an all-out action film, action comedy with Jack Black as the funny panda, but I do think there are moments, especially with, say, Oogway in the first one, Master Oogway, and, his father in it, the goose, Mr. Ping, who's one of my favourite characters throughout this whole series. I do think that the film paces itself well and has those moments where it can take a step back, develop character more in it, as well as offset it with the funny comedic action set pieces. So we may as well get into some of the characters now. So you've got Jack Black as your main character, Po, who is the underdog. He's the wacky, excitable, clumsy oaf of a character who is destined to become the Dragon Warrior and become the greatest fighter in the kingdom. Now, with Jack Black, he's sort of like Will Ferrell for me. He can be very hit and miss. I love Jack Black, for example, in these movies, and I think he's great in, say, Tenacious D. I know you hate that movie. I know you hate that movie so much. School of Rock, I thought he was very, very good in. But outside of that, there are times when I find him incredibly annoying, or his humour just really doesn't work for me. And he's also one of those actors, and I always go with Tom Cruise with this one as the go-to example, but I can only see him as Jack Black, for example. Whenever I hear his voice, I'm like, oh, that's Jack Black. I can never suspend my disbelief and go, oh, this is a character he's playing. And I kind of had that problem with the first Kung Fu Panda, but then as the series progressed, and you get into the backstory more of Po and his history and everything like that, then I did see him more as a character. But he is a very typical character. He has a lot of slapstick humour in the first one. There are a lot of awkward moments. But, by the end of it, it's a predictable ending. It is a very simple plot, as you said, but when he becomes the Dragon Warrior and he does have that final fight with Tai Lung, I was rooting for him, and through the whole movie I did have a smile on my face, and that's something that's continued with all of these movies, especially with Kung Fu Panda 3. They're just really fun, enjoyable movies to watch for me, and I like that the character, although whatever you may think of him in this first one, if he's clumsy or he's annoying, he's sort of Jar Jar Binks-esque. He's nowhere near that bad, but in terms of his mannerisms. But because his character continues and develops and grows and learns new powers and new life lessons as the films go on, when you go back and watch Kung Fu Panda 1, it is kind of endearing to see just how far the character has come. Because when you get to Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, although he still does retain a lot of the funny qualities to what he did in the first one, it does feel somewhat less like he is becoming more professional and more proficient in Kung Fu. Yeah. At least I get that anyway.
One thing I was going to talk about was the ending and that fight with Tai Lung. I really didn't feel much watching it. It was very passing and fleeting, and I wasn't engaged with it. My thought was that he's supposed to be the Dragon Warrior, right? But all of the situations he finds himself in, he gets out through Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Something comes along and gets him out at the last second. And I half expected him to lose because he is so clumsy. And that's a character trait of him, but I was kind of rooting for him to kind of get knocked on his ass.
Good guys always got to win at the end in an animated film, really. But I do agree with that, especially, in fact, we may as well get into the character Tai Lung now. I believe he's a leopard, a snow leopard or something. He's played by Ian McShane, brilliantly voiced by him. Personally, I know you said earlier that you really didn't like this character. I absolutely love Tai Lung, and in all honesty, he's probably my favourite villain out of all three. I know a lot of people go with Lord Shen, played by Gary Oldman in the sequel, which we'll get to later. But in terms of final fights with the villain, the final showdown, I think that Kung Fu Panda 1 is definitely the best of the three. Again, I don't want to go too much into 3, but I like that he actually had a good running length fight with him. I mean, Tai Lung has a fight with Master Shifu first, played by Dustin Hoffman, which is a great fight. It's the typical old master versus students, like your Obi-Wan versus Vader in the original Star Wars, and then you go straight into the new fight with Dragon Warrior versus Tai Lung. And I do kind of agree with that at the end of the fight, it is very much Po just thrust into these different set pieces and situations where he just kind of looks out, something will go his way, and it does make Tai Lung very weak and cowardly in the end. I would say they definitely played up more for laughs, which is kind of frustrating when throughout the whole rest of the film they've been bigging up Tai Lung as the greatest warrior in the valley, that he's able to take down Master Shifu. He escapes from the prison towards the beginning of the film, which is a fantastic sequence, and it just showcases all these skills he has. He takes out the Furious Five on the rope bridge, and then he comes into contact with this clumsy character who can't fight properly, hasn't had as much training as the others, but is somehow able to be beaten. I agree with that, but with these kind of films, you just kind of go along with it. The only way you could chalk it up to is that maybe Po had some kind of different fighting style that he wasn't used to. Shifu says throughout the whole rest of the film that he wasn't able to train Po the way he trained everyone else. So maybe that sort of threw Tai Lung off, but I do agree that towards the end, I think that the whole menacing nature of his character is very much stripped away because of how easily he's beaten.
Yes. I didn't find him that menacing, really. And, I mean, he does take down the Furious Five. Actually, that's another topic I kind of wanted to talk about, was the fact that you get these voice actors in all these really high-profile stars.
Really, really big names.
2 lines.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it at the start. I was really looking forward to hearing, Jackie Chan doing some voice acting. But he has hardly anything to say. And it's the same with Seth Rogen as Mantis, Lucy Liu as Viper.
Angelina Jolie as Tigress.
Yeah, I think she did have more lines.
She definitely, yeah.
In it, but she just, her character was so big.
No, but I like that again because there's development. It's like the Thorin Oakenshield thing where they're just a dick throughout like the whole first movie, but then they become more.
Then she goes back to being a dick in the second one.
That's just her hardened exterior, I think. But no, and that is probably, if I'm going to think of one, my biggest negative of this whole series is that you do have these great side characters that you want to learn more, you want to see more from them, you want to see their interactions more with Po, and whilst you do get some interactions, they're very fleeting. The plot soon takes over, the characters will be split up. In fact, that's probably one of the things that I enjoyed most about Kung Fu Panda 2 is that Po is pretty much with the Furious Five for most of the movie, and I really enjoyed seeing them all playing off each other. But as you said, you get these really high profile names and they probably have like 3 lines of dialogue each. Yeah. Especially Lucy Liu as Viper. Like, if you didn't tell me that Lucy Liu did that voice, I wouldn't know. Like, you could just get anyone, these really high profile names. And really the only other character, the main one, is Master Shifu, Dustin Hoffman, who I love. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I think he's definitely one of the shining points of this series, and I love his just how frustrated he gets with Po at the start, and this even continues all the way through the movies, where he will say something where he's trained for years, decades even, to learn a particular move or a particular technique, and Po will just master it by the end of the movie. But no, he's great, and I like his relationship with Oogway as well. Probably the most breathtaking scene in the film is where Oogway kind of becomes one with the Force and turns into lotus petals and floats away. The music as well, I think this deserves its own section, but without a doubt, this is one of my favourite scores to any kind of film, really. I think that Hans Zimmer's brilliant. The first two films were done by Hans Zimmer and John Powell, whereas the third movie was just done by Hans Zimmer. But I'm off to see Hans Zimmer actually in April in concert, and I really, really hope that Kung Fu Panda gets a section, because I absolutely adore the music. There's main themes for the characters, for the themes, and I love when soundtracks are able to continue and develop into the sequels. Really brief tangent, but one of my biggest problems with like Marvel movies is where they'll have a great soundtrack for the first movie and then they'll get a different composer in for the sequels and it'll be completely different music and there's no overarching theme for characters. This, when you hear a certain theme play, whether it's the Dragon Warrior theme or whatever it is, you're instantly taken to that character and that theme symbolises that character, and that's the sign of a good theme.
The music is really another strong point of the film. I've kind of given it a lot of bashing, but I don't hate it.
No.
It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And,
yeah.
And this series isn't really my thing. I mean, I do get a few laughs at them, but overall, it just isn't my thing.
Yeah.
I'm coming out of the film originally hating it, sort of growing to kind of, well, they are kind of fun, but you know.
You tolerate it. You tolerate them.
I don't hate it. I just don't. They're not really for me. And I think the second one kind of did that as well. I went, after I had sort of really not disliking the first one at the time, I went into the second one, so going, okay, hopefully this will be exactly the same. This will be much better.
And do you think it was better than the first one?
Yes.
This is the question I'm going to ask you. Yeah,
I do.
A lot of people do. In all honesty, like, I've watched the second one a few more times. I'll get into my initial thoughts of it when I first originally saw it, but I don't know. I like seeing how stories begin. I'm like this with most films, to be honest, with the exception of Star Wars, although the original New Hope is fantastic. Empire is my favourite, but say Lord of the Rings, Fellowship, you were watching it before we hit record. I love seeing how stories begin.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like that with Kung Fu Panda. I just think that can be a self-contained story in its own right, and I like seeing the growth of Poe in that.
I
but
understand that.
but I understand that, like most middle chapters in a trilogy or whatever, I know that there's rumours since the first one came out they want to do 6 of these movies in total, which I don't know if that's going to happen. But this one is definitely a lot darker. It definitely develops the characters a lot more. It's a lot more personal. It pushes Poe towards his most emotional breaking point when it gets into his heritage and his history and what really happened to him. Where does he come from? It's ultimately a crisis of identity in this one. So I'm guessing you like the themes of this one a lot more. There's a lot more to get into it.
Yes, there is a lot more going on. And that's probably my biggest complaint about the first one, was that it was all surface level, but this kind of does go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
With some of the things, you spoke about them briefly a second ago, but I like that it's gotten to the point where you can really examine it more. I mean, it's still not my thing, but you can sort of now take it apart and look at the different aspects and everything, the angles of the story and the characters, and kind of work them into a really great overarching theme, which I think is really, really good. And I did actually really enjoy the second one.
Well, I'll just go into the plot first, then go into my initial thoughts of it. So, the Kung Fu Panda 2, Poe and his friends fight to stop a peacock villain from conquering China with a deadly new weapon, but first the Dragon Warrior must come to terms with his past. Now, unlike my initial impressions of the first one, where I went into that thinking, oh god, this is going to be terrible, what the hell is Kung Fu Panda? This is going to be a biggest waste of 90 minutes of my life. After I saw that one and I loved it, and this one came out 3 years later, I was instantly hyped for it because I knew how much I loved the first one. So I sat down in this movie, hyped as hell, and my initial impressions were that I really didn't care for it. And the reason for that is that I've since grown to accept it now and like it, especially with Kung Fu Panda 3, because that develops a lot more on what happens in Kung Fu Panda 2. We get this very tragic backstory for Po and the fate of his panda family and just the pandas in general at the hands of the villain, Lord Shen. And then there's sort of a little stinger before the credits, and it immediately just destroys all of that tragic backstory. Where it only leaves the fact that his mother and a few of the pandas were killed, whereas when you're watching the film, you think that he is the last panda.
Yes.
Like, Lord Shen has just committed mass genocide of his entire species just to try and get to him, which just immediately ups the stakes as Gary Oldman's character in this film. And then when you get to the end and you see that, and you see that there's like a whole thriving village of them still, I don't know, I think it just kind of took away that whole emotion for me a little bit.
I can see that. I definitely can see that. And that's probably one of my complaints about it as well, is that the end kind of does...
It's a definite cliffhanger, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't end in its own right. It's tying up for the third one.
And it kind of throws away with all the stuff at the beginning, or like you said about he's committed mass genocide. Really, that's dark for like a kids movie, and I think they should have stuck with that. Whereas the end just kind of completely just throws it away and says, "Oh well, a few of them got killed off," and there you go. That's a whole new like society of pandas. Him being the last one is a very good idea that should have been carried out.
It's like Superman. He's like the last son of Krypton. He's the final panda. That's it. And I mean, his whole backstory, if we go into it a bit now, because we talk about the character development with Poe, etc. It's nothing new. It's basically the story of Moses. But I don't know, with the emotion in this film, it definitely hit me a lot. And when it gets to that scene, it is, well, I know you're not into these films as much as me, but it is a bit of a tearjerker in all honesty, and that again comes from the music. Hans Zimmer, John Powell, fantastic soundtrack. I would say this soundtrack's even better than the first, develops the themes from all the other ones just like the film does with its characters. And this is developed more in Kung Fu Panda 3, but with Kung Fu Panda 2, I love Poe's relationship with his adoptive father, Mr. Ping. I think their mechanic together is brilliant. And I just like the direction that Poe goes in this film. I think it's really smart. And this is why I hold it up above most animated films or film series, is that it actually has characters that progress through the movies. And that's so rare now. Usually you'll just get, all the characters are going on another adventure. Which is sort of... I would say this is sort of what Toy Story 2 did when you look at between Toy Story 1 and 2, whereas 3 actually does develop the characters more. But with this one as well, I mentioned this earlier, but I like that Poe is with the Furious Five throughout the whole movie. But on the flip side, because of that, we really don't get much Master Shifu in this one with Dustin Hoffman. And he only really sort of... He shows up at the beginning, tells him that he needs to... I'm trying to think of the power he gets in this one. It's like those spirit ball things he throws back, isn't it? It's chi in the third one, and I can't remember what power he goes for in this one. And then Shifu just kind of shows up at the end for the finale. But the character I want to talk about the most from this film is not Master Crocodile, voiced by Jean-Claude Van Damme. It is Lord Shen, voiced by Gary Oldman. Who, if you didn't tell me this was Gary Oldman, I would not know. He gets completely lost in this role.
He gets lost in every role.
Yeah. And he even has moments in this where it's like the everyone from Leon the Professional. He is intimidating. The character is a peacock, and right from his opening scene where he just outright murders one of the biggest kung fu masters in all of China with his cannon, he's just so much fun, just how they animate the character. And I can almost imagine Gary Oldman in the recording booth getting into character where he's sort of hunched over a little, he's stalking around the booth.
Yeah.
He's just so charismatic in this role and just deceptive and horrible. And he does have a really interesting backstory. It's the typical sort of jaded child who wants more than he's given and wants to conquer China because he thinks that he'll be proving himself that way. But I think that the character definitely had a lot more going to him with his own past than, say, Tai Lung did. Tai Lung was he just wanted more. Yes. He wanted ultimate power. Whereas in this one, there's like a family history and a dynasty that he's trying to uphold and try to maintain together. And the soothsayer in this, again, it's like another prophecy though in this one as well, isn't there? There's you will be overthrown by a warrior of black and white.
Yeah. And one of the problems that I have with prophecy storylines is that it just seems to be a way for writers to like get around things they just don't know the answers to.
Yeah.
And I remember I watched a YouTube series where it had a prophecy, and what it seems to me is that they don't know what else to do with the story, so let's just make a prophecy instead of trying new things out, trying to really write good material. It's just prophecy. Let's just slap a prophecy in there, and it hardly ever works, I don't think.
No, and I think it just kind of restrains the story as well, because once you know the prophecy, you know that it's not going to break away from that in any way. Or there might be a moment where the main hero, the protagonist, sort of fails a little, probably during the second act, and he'll think that the prophecy was just a lie or something, but then ultimately it all works out right, and that was the necessary path. So when you get to moments like that, you know the ending immediately. And even with this, like, going in, you know that they're not going to kill off Poe or anything like that. They're not going to do anything drastic like that, and you know that he's going to save the day at the end of it, ultimately. But it just takes away the surprise for me a little bit with narratives when they do that with a prophecy. I don't know. It's always like with an animated film, though, as well. Lego Movie did it, as I said, and that was one of my favourite movies from that year, to be honest, Lego Movie.
Lego Movie was the same as older DreamWorks movies, but it's a different company. But the whole self-parody prophecy storyline, which was really, really good, I don't think it quite does it here. I think the prophecy kind of bogs it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's much the same with the first one. I thought it just didn't feel organic that he developed into this, because you knew at the start he was going to get into it anyway, so it didn't feel organic to me, him building up to this, being the Dragon Warrior. And that's
but I do. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I've finished.
No, I was just saying, with the whole becoming the Dragon Warrior, what this film could have very easily done at the beginning of this film was have him revert back to how he is at the start of the first movie, but it really doesn't. It kicks off with an action scene. We see Poe in action. You can see that he's advanced in his techniques. He still has the sort of blundering moments, but that's just the character. That's just the charming likability of the character. But he is fighting alongside the Furious Five, and he's holding his own. So I like that they do keep that momentum up with the character, and maybe if they do eventually do a Kung Fu Panda 4, 5 or 6 or whatever, by 6 he'll just be this unstoppable badass. And I'm trying. Another negative I kind of have, and this came in with Kung Fu Panda 3 as well, is that they do get to a stage where it is the same cookie cutter plot for each one. Yes, they do take the character in a different way, or they'll develop more. It'll get more emotional, things like that. But in terms of the actual core plot, it's Poe needs to learn new technique and life lesson about himself, goes on adventure, does it, learns power, saves the day. It is very much the same plot each one, and with a film like this, I don't know how far away you could do. I don't know if you could do anything different, so drastically different, without people reacting volatile to it. But if they do continue this into the sequels, it is going to get very predictable. It'll be like, oh, who's the villain this week? Oh, it's Master whoever who didn't get the power he wanted many years ago, and he's back to get it, and Po needs to learn a new power that's the only one that can stop him. If it does get to that, I can see me dropping off this series. I'm trying to think what else I can talk about Kung Fu Panda 2. I definitely think that the action ramps up a lot more in this one. I think that visually it's a lot more impressive. It's a lot more emotional, but again, at the end, the ending's a very different ending to the first one. In the first one, you have this big all-out fist fight with Tai Lung, which I love because I love hand-to-hand combat in films and martial arts and everything like that. In this one, you really don't get a final showdown as such. You have this moment where Po is using the Spirit Ball and he's firing it back at the ships. He's basically taking out Lord Shen's fleet. And then he has a moment where he squares off against Lord Shen at the end, but it is over very, very quickly. There's no big fight. And because of that, I don't think the ending is as impressive as the first one or enjoyable. But also, I'm kind of glad that they did that because Lord Shen is a very different kind of villain to Tai Lung. And I think if it had have resorted to an all-out fistfight at the end, maybe that would have detracted from the character. He's not an all-out fighter. He's a manipulator, he's conniving, he's a master planner, and I think that if they had have resorted to him fighting him, it would have degraded his character a little bit.
Yeah, because they're two completely different people. Tai Lung is very much a brawler.
Yeah.
Rather than in the second movie, you get a manipulator. It's not you can't have a manipulator also fist fight at the end.
No.
It doesn't work. That's one thing I realise. There's change. There's a different. I'm kind of going for the villain of the week thing, but it is a difference in style. That's what I really like. There's progress in that.
Yeah, and I do think that Lord Shen as a character, and Gary Oldman does this brilliantly with his voice acting, he does show moments of vulnerability. I do think that the character has a lot of depth to him, although he is sort of hell-bent on destroying the pandas. And we talked about that at the end, where the final shot of the film is this really breathtaking camera pan throughout the whole entire valley and all of China. The music's really nice, and then we get landed with the final shot where Po's father is still alive and there's a thriving village of pandas. And I remember that final shot hitting, and I just kind of went, oh well, the whole film feels kind of pointless now, the whole meaning it was telling. But since then, I bought Kung Fu Panda 2 on DVD. I've watched it many times since then, and I think watching it with other people as well has really made me enjoy this film a lot more. Hearing their reactions to it, what they think of it, they think it's really impressive, and it's made me have a new love for this movie. As I said, I have seen Kung Fu Panda 3. I've only seen it the once, so I'm not exactly sure how I'd rank each one in the franchise just yet. I think I need to watch Kung Fu Panda 3 a few more times and then let it settle and see how I ultimately think it entirely plays out. But I think Kung Fu Panda is definitely a solid one, and as you said, there's a lot more going on in it thematically, and I think that's probably one of the strengths of it. I am interested to see what you think of Kung Fu Panda 3. Hopefully we'll get a review out for that in the next few days. As I said, it came out on Friday for us.
Soon.
Yep.
In the next couple of days, we'll see what happens. And we'll get a record like immediately after.
Yep, definitely. So, yeah, that'll do it for our discussion / reviews on Kung Fu Panda and Kung Fu Panda 2. Be sure to comment and subscribe. Let us know what you think of the series in general. In terms of reviews that are coming up on the channel soon, we will. I think the biggest one's probably Batman v Superman at this point, isn't it? But we'll have a live stream as well. We're doing a live stream review / watch along of Man of Steel, which I know you're looking forward to it, but that means I've actually got to watch Man of Steel again, which is oh boy. Yeah, this is don't. I've got to give Zack Snyder some of my money. I can see that turning into Cinema Savvy Civil War, in all honesty, especially between me and George, because we're like completely opposite sides of the coin on that one.
Yeah, I'm very much in the middle.
Oh, you fence sitter. But no, that's going to be an interesting one, and we'll have a notice out when that's going out. So keep a look on our Facebook and Twitter pages. We'll have details on that when they come out. Links to those are in the description below. So yeah, that'll do it for our reviews today, and until the next video, thank you very much for listening.